Welcome to 20 Minutes of Clarity. I'm your co-host, Jason Noble. And with me today, I have Andy Merchant, our other co-host. And I'm excited to talk about education planning. Yeah, I know it's an important topic, right? But this is a pressing issue for a lot of people out there, and it's such an important thing. But Andy, why do you think this is an important topic that we dove into today?
Well, Jason, we talk about helping our clients make really good informed, well-informed decision. And one of the realities is, the cost of college is a real deal, right? I mean, it's college debt is high regardless of what political strategies are put into place. But I grew up in the time you get an education and then it earns you the opportunity to have, hopefully a high paying career. You make great connections. So I think college is so essential, but I think addressing the real challenge that our college graduates face when they come out of school, have debt, and then how do they save for retirement? How do they do these things? So I think this is a message today, hopefully, for those parents that are thinking about how do I start with my younger child or even my teenager who's getting ready to plan for college. What conversations are you having in the house first, and then we'll talk about the money on how to get there.
Money is green. It's not blue and it's not red. So, I always keep that in mind. But there has been some more political chatter out there about student loan debt and a proposal from President Biden. Can you talk a little bit more about that, Andy?
Well, right, it keeps changing. It's questionable. Will it happen? I don't. I would rather just instead of the details because the details aren't for us to share as much. We did have the one piece of action that was taken to reduce or forgive a tremendous amount of debt, which obviously we all know hasn't happened. It got rejected, and now there's a new piece out there where he's trying to reduce additional debt, which is primarily income based for lower income and those kind of groups. But I think that we always forget. It's funny you say that because I'm going to shift a little bit from what's out there, what they're trying to push down, and because I don't agree with it. That's my personal stance as much
Yeah.
as I think that we earned an education, we paid for services. It should be our responsibility. Now, the root of it is there are alternatives. There are a tremendous amount. I live in the Midwest. Obviously, we have a lot of rural communities. There's ways to reduce your student debt through standard programs, going out and if you're a medical student or have medical debt, supporting your small communities, going out, sacrificing maybe the big city life for rural life, and that could help. I've always joked with some people, we've always had a forgiveness program. It's called the military. Serve our country, and I know there's programs out there. So less on what it is. I think we need to shift our focus to our clients and not focus on the loan forgiveness strategy that we're trying to push through or being trying to be pushed through right now by President Biden. But I think we need to focus more on what action people can
Yeah,
take,
what
such as
what can you control and what can you influence? And if
yeah,
you're hoping that you're gonna get forgiveness, that's probably not the best financial approach or strategy. I'm going to dive right into one of the more common approaches, which is the 529 plan. Now, Andy, little known fact about me, I don't even know if you know this. I used to be on the 529 desk for a very large institution at one point in my career, a very early point of my career. And I would get phone calls from advisors across the country going, "Hey, I got this couple in the office and we're talking about 529s. Can you go into what they should be considering and thinking?" And so I'll just give a high level overview, and then I think we could get into more of like what kind of conversations people experience through our Clear Picture process and wealth program. But the
yeah.
529 plan is a tool where you could be able to put money in potentially tax free if you go into the state that you live in. Okay, every state is different. There's a lot of variations into those rules, but a lot of them they do offer some state tax incentive for the contribution that goes in. The money will be invested with pre-selected investments from those particular states. Every state is different, like I said, but there's preset investments in a lot of them. And you could do like an age base. So, for instance, if your child is 2 years old, you could do like a 16-year investment and it'll be more aggressive now and go more conservative as they get closer to 18. Or you could build out your own investment vehicle however you see fit within their confines. The money will grow tax deferred. Okay. And then at the time, it could be used for qualified educational expenses So it has to be qualified educational expenses. If it's not qualified, that could create tax implications. But if it's qualified, then that money could be used for their educational expenses. And there's some caveats to everything that goes into there, meaning what if they get like a scholarship, right? Well, then you can still pull out a certain portion that's proportionate to the scholarship and not incur any the penalties or anything like that. Um, and then the other thing is they expanded the 529 not just for college, but you could use it also for high school and other educational costs throughout the child's education. Anything that you want to add on the 529 at this point, Andy?
Well, I mean, with you being the expert from your given days, I think I no, I think I think it's real, but I think you made a really good point there. This is a deferral strategy, and anytime you defer it, you need to start early. So how are you telling maybe some younger families, that have those, the less than 5 year old. Usually they're earlier in their earning career, may not have the cash flow to dedicate or fund. So how do you have that conversation with your younger clients that are looking to be committed early into the phase with the 529?
Well, I always believe like you got to have your own mask on first when there's turbulence, right? And so that's really a reference to making sure that my client's financial plan, retirement plan, is set in the right course. Then it's just looking at cash flow, money in, money out. What do we do with the difference? And if we could just allocate some money, and it could be a lot different to a lot of people that are listening, right? Some money
Yeah,
could be $20, that could be $200 a month, right? It could really range. Some money to some people is $2,000 a month. Yeah, I've seen it all, right? But
yeah, yeah.
some money to just start the behavior on the practice of getting money funded into it, and it comes back down to cash flow. Andy, is there anything that you're saying to build off of what I'm saying, or maybe a
Yeah.
switch,
Well,
a switch to what I'm saying?
yeah, I mean, I just think that too, just same way when we start to have our conversation with clients through accumulating clients through the Clear Picture Wealth program is, what is that goal? What's that conversation? My
Hmm.
wife and I, when we set out, my game plan was never to go out and fund 100% of my children's college right off the bat. My goal was to make it to where there was no excuse for them to go. And what I mean by that is our plan is let's make sure we have enough seed money for them to say, I want to go to college. We can provide that benefit for a year. From there, then we can explore. Are there scholarships once they're in college? Are there employee benefits? I'll tell you my story as we get there, because I mean, I had a tremendous lucky opportunity with my employer who covered most of my expenses while I was working. So just walking through that, but that's what our family goal was: is let's save enough in order to try to get our kids the opportunity to go to at least 1 year without them having the burden and say, well, I don't have the money. I have to go get a loan. I can't get a loan. We weren't in a financial position. And maybe that's 2 years for some, right? And there's people out there that says 100%, I want all my kids funding. And I think that's where the funding number gets set. And then to your point, start early, put a little aside. I want you to hit on it too, because they've made a recent change in the Secure Act that makes the 529 a little bit more loose, potentially later, but there's some limitations. But you want to hit on that real quick, and then maybe we'll go into other strategies.
I could touch on the Secure Act in a little bit. What I'm going to get into
Yeah.
is this is very personal to everyone that's listening. To your point, Andy, and like my wife's parents, they paid us 75%, where my parents said, "Hey, you're going to go to college," and then right before I went to college, good luck, kid. You're paying for your own college 100%, right? So
Yeah.
I'm looking at it from a perspective of my own two children. I want to help them out, but I don't want to just give them 100% of it. I had people I went to school with that their parents were paying 100%, and then they were getting an allowance from mommy and daddy, and they didn't make it very long, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think they got to have skin in the game, but that's my 2 cents on that part of it. Now the other thing that I would say is when I was looking at for my own children's education and going through the clear picture analysis for my own finances and with a lot of my clients, one thing we didn't like was it had to be qualified educational expenses. Like, so we felt like it was good to put some money into the 529, but have money in other areas so that we could help beyond just education. Like we can help with education in a tax
Mhm.
efficient way, but what if, you know, my daughter who's 9, it's kind of crazy, but I'm a planner, right? I'm thinking about for a wedding and for a down payment on a home. So
Mm.
all that stuff comes into play, and I think we're going to delve into that as well. But so the Secure Act on the 529, you really want me to get into that?
I
Okay.
think I think it's just worth a quick highlight because I think it's a key piece of information that I know will maybe encourage people to fund. They'll still look at 529s as a funding solution within the Roth transfer option. I know it's limited. I think there's some misunderstandings on it because our news and our sound bites are really good at pulling out the highlights. But I think if we just touch on it, and then I know we'll have probably a more intentional conversation individually, client. But yeah, just a little elaboration from Mr. Noble.
You know, so on the Secure Act 2.0, they they there were so many pieces of literature that came in on this, and they touched on not just 529s, but RMDs and Roths as well. And you know, I think it would be better if we were to write a blog on this, because I don't want to give any information on this right now, Andy, because it's going to be a snippet, and then someone's going to go, well, Jason said I could do this, right? And then it's going to be like,
Yeah.
well, no, you got to understand all the other complexities. So what are your thoughts? We take this off the podcast and put that onto like a blog post, so that people that are listening, they could go and read it themselves and understand it with more clarity than just me touching on it for a moment.
Hey, I'm
Is
always
that
good for a little. I'm good for a financial tease, and I think we accomplished that in this quick conversation. And then yeah, definitely. I know the blogs and the written communication, so no, I'm on board with that. So yeah, let me add one more thing. Then let's jump into some strategies after that. So the other thing that I do encourage, is it's tied directly to being more efficient with debt of college debt is have that conversation. I mean, I just dropped my kid off today as his first year of high school, so now I have a freshman in the household. It's a little too early to talk about, son, what's your career? What do you want to do tomorrow? I will tell you this: I love it. My 12-year-old, who you know so well through things, I asked him last night. I said, "So, buddy, what do you want to do when you get older?" He goes, "I want to do what you do, Dad." So I got my little buddy who loves financial advising, loves helping people, but my older son, who's rightfully does not need an answer yet. But as I've encouraged it in our household, we're going to have that conversation, usually starting towards the end of his sophomore year, early junior. Because if you can hit college with a better understanding of maybe what you're interested in and where you want to go, the efficiency through college and taking classes, and more importantly, checking with your local colleges in the area when you're in high school, when you're senior, and taking some of those credits earlier when they're so much cheaper than going to the big universities and trying to get as much of that workload out of the way. It takes planning, just like everything. And the reason I wanted to throw that in as a great segment into how we approach things in the Clear Picture Wealth program when it comes down to this priority of a client. It's out there. If you have a priority and you need, talk to us about it. But these are some of the things that we're going to share with you is having the behind the doors or around the table at home discussions and being intentional.
Yeah, and as I'm pondering, like, how do I handle the volley that you threw over to me on the 529s? It's really around it. It doesn't happen in 2023, so you got to be conscious of this. It has to be in 2024, where you could take portions of the 529 and move it into the child's Roth IRA. But you're subject to a number of different things. You can only do up to 35,000 in total. You're subject to the annual limit every year. So this year it's 6,500, but again, you can't do it in 2023. So don't do this, right? So you can see there's a lot of stuff that we could talk about, Andy, and there's always going to be there could be an asterisk. So I'm trying to make sure that most of the stuff we don't talk, it has an asterisk. So we'll get that on the blog. Okay.
Yep.
So I want to share with those that are listening and with you, Andy, like a conversation that I recently had with a grandparent. So with a grandparent, it's the first one on both sides. So everybody's pumped up, excited. The baby just turned a month old. Okay, the granddaughter. So big stuff is going on. And think about this: they called me and they go, "Listen, we want to take $5,000 and put it towards our grandchild's education." And I said, okay, great. We could definitely talk through that. Let me ask you, what are the other grandparents doing? They're like, they're doing the same thing. They're going to put the money into a 529 plan. I was like, oh, do you know how much? And they're like $5,000 a year. I was like, holy guacamole, right? I did not
Yeah.
have, I had wonderful grandparents. I still do, right? But like, not like that, right? And so I was like, okay, let's just talk through it. Let me talk to your son because I want to understand their finances. Well, the son was, this is an example of multi-generational planning. The son was woefully underfunded on life insurance. And so we looked at a life insurance policy that built up a cash value within it off of his life, not the grandparents' life, right? We wanted to get as much in the cash value. We even ran it on the granddaughter who's only a month old, right? But we looked at the policy on his life, the father's life. And what we're able to see is by the time that the granddaughter gets to college age, they're going to have money that they could withdraw from tax free. They could even at 16, let's say the granddaughter wants to buy their first car, they could lend that money to the granddaughter and teach financial principles where she's going to pay back that loan with a small interest that's smaller than what she could get at the bank, and it stays within the family. And that's a technique called family banking. But we're using it for the benefit of the granddaughter. Now, this client had a trust, and we're going to have the owner of the policy be the trust. The insured is the dad, who's in his who's turning 36. Okay, and the beneficiary is not the granddaughter. The beneficiary is the trust, because there could be the generation skipping rules and regulations there. But by doing it in the trust, we just write a provision within the trust so that this policy is earmarked for the children of this father, of this person, of the son. And then by doing it that way, if they have additional children down the line, well, then that policy could be split up to however 2, 3, how many children they end up having. So we wrote it out in a way that involved not just estate planning, but multi-generational planning, education planning, first home planning, family banking, you name it. It was a lot of moving parts, but that's what we were able to identify through the clear picture analysis, not only from the grandparents, but going through the Clear Picture Wealth Program for their son and daughter-in-law. Now, here's the interesting thing. We're going to be able to get those two parents on the right track for their finances, but also they're starting off ahead of the curve on their own baby who's 1 month old as we have this conversation, that they're going to be able to fully fund educational expenses as long as they go to an in-state school. But and the reason why I say that is in-state, out of state, right? The numbers could get really funky. And if you look at inflation, education costs are one of the highest inflation rates that we have in this country. So having multiple arrows in the quiver to tackle this topic is such an important thing. Now, Andy, I know I'm going to get off my soapbox here in a moment, but could I just said, hey, why don't you just open up a 529 plan or gift it to the kids to put it into the 529 plan or UTMA or UGMA type of a strategy? Could I have done that? By all means. And we did look at it. What we saw was what was in the best interest, not only to my client, but then also to the intentions of the money was not just only for education as we went through the dialogue. It was to make sure that they could use it for anything that is needed down the road that is just in the best interest and the benefit of the granddaughter.
Yeah. And as we kind of wrap on that, I mean, I'm going to echo it to a bit. Part of the value of the Clear Picture Wealth Program that we work so intently with our clients on is to multi-purpose investments for our clients. In this particular case, a 529 does get limited. It's got some of its benefits. I'm not saying out there don't use them. They are a great funding source. They've got some benefits. But if you could take the same dollar and be able to provide multiple options, because life will change, options will adjust, let's do that. If you've got $5,000 to save per year, where is the most efficient way to be able to provide that benefit? And that's what we try to help to identify. That's what makes our clients unique. The funding commitment, the need, the goals, all those things are what we have to determine. And from there, we can look at some of these underutilized strategies that you just referred to in the life insurance. the grandparent planning can come in with so much stuff. So I think that it's just opening the door and having a conversation tailored to you and finding a way to realize goals.
What is it if you don't have a plan, you plan to fail? Is that what it says? Is that the saying?
I think you're
So
the
if you get anything from this conversation, don't get that, okay? Because I think I butchered that quote. But what I want you to get is we can't, as a professional, we can't help unless you come to us and share what your goals and aspirations are and what you're looking to achieve. And and we will bring up in our conversation what about little Jack and Sue here? Do we want to do any education planning for them? And you're the ones who are going to say yes or no to that question. And if the answer is no, okay, great. Right? Thanks for letting us know. If the answer is yes, great. What does that look like? How in depth do you want us to go? Do you want to do the plan that my parents have, which was no plan? Don't do that. I love you, mom and dad, if you're listening. Don't do what they did to me, okay? Because they didn't have a plan. Andy's parents, my wife's parents, my clients, they have a plan for their children, and I'm going to tell you that's going to provide a lot more security to your young kids' financial future by having some sort of plan in place. I'm Jason Noble, and that is Andy Merchant. Thank you so much for listening. That was 20 minutes of clarity.